So this lamp's going to start out a little bit different. Instead of 3D printing something, going to use a model. Haven't put together a model since I was a kid, but found this on Facebook Marketplace for 10 bucks. It's a AMT speeder bike display, skill level 2, so nothing too complicated. You can see there's 20 years anniversary, so I'm assuming it came out in 97. Not seeing any copyright offhand. But yeah, I assume it came out in 97. Some side pictures of the model. On the inside, we have our sprues, the back display, and the base, but will not be using these, I don't think. And then we have our instructions. Join a fan club. Some advertisements. A little base display, I guess, goes on that. Yeah. Definitely probably use that, maybe. But yeah. Let's take these out, get them off, and see if they fit together. Alright, finished getting the models together, and I see why it's been so long since I've put a model together. Started out with Gorilla Glue, and realized that wasn't going to cut it because it was taking too long to dry, so I had to go get some super glue, and that worked out better. Started on the speeder bike, left the Scout Trooper be while I did the speeder bike, and came out pretty well. A lot of delicate parts towards the front of it. Super glued it all, and then added some UV resin in some areas. Like up here, one of these parts was bent when it was on the tree, so it wasn't lining up and holding with the super glue long enough, and kind of had to adjust them to where these lined up a little bit better, as it was way off. One was up higher than the other. And then added some UV resin down here for the foot peg holder, give it a little bit more strength, and also on the back flaps there. And then, as you can see, went ahead and started doing some filler just on some of the cracks. Nothing really too bad here on the speeder bike. Just had to fill a little bit there. And on that side. I'll let all that dry and sand it down. and then go over some other areas also that need to be sanded. There, and that little spot there on the bottom of the engine. I tried to clean up most of it when cutting them off the sprues, but did miss a few. But we'll go over all of it and just clean up the edges and stuff on that. And then the Scout Trooper, I had put him off after doing the speeder bike, trying to get the arms aligned with the handles, and I'll have to kind of stretch those a little bit and glue them in. But the Scout Trooper, got them together, he fit well, glued them up, and then when I did, was having a hard time getting them put closed up here at the top. So, but even all the way down, had some seams all the way around everywhere, so went ahead and filled that in also. May have to fill it in again. Yeah, I think I missed a spot there, but I'll have to sand that down and then maybe do another coat of it and see how that looks before I prime it. Be a little intricate sanding, but not as much as if I had 3D printed it. So that is the progress so far, and we will go to the next step. Alright, got the speeder bike primed. Used a Rust-Oleum flat red. Just primed it all. Missed a few spots in there. A little bit in there. I think it'll be alright. It's turning out pretty good. After I primed it, noticed like a seam on that hose from the mold process, so sanded that down a little bit, but other than that, it came out pretty well. No other issues are really to fix on it. Just have to start painting it. And then the Scout Trooper, did that in a what do you call it, filler primer, and then went back, filled in the seams again, sanded those down, and then did a gloss white base coat on it just because it was nice and sunny today. I didn't film the primer part, but want to go ahead and get that white on there, especially being gloss. Gloss always takes forever. He's still a little tacky. Got something on it, but yeah, that, and just mainly wanted to cover it in white for all the armor, and then I'll go back in and hand brush all the details for the shirt and helmet and all that. And then while I was waiting on that to dry, took the little plaque that it had and painted that, put a clear coat on it, and then noticed on the parts tree had this little plaque, so I took that off and painted it. There we go. Not sure where I'll put that, maybe on the base next to that one, but we'll see. But thought it was a nice little extra piece in there, and so painted it up. Use those for the base. Now I'll probably start painting the Scout Trooper. Finally finished painting the Scout Trooper. Put a clear coat on him last night and did well, but the jumpsuit, the black areas, it was all glossy and he just looked fake and like a toy. So went back this morning and painted flat black on all of that and left the gloves. Brought it out in the sun to see if it would give a little bit better light. But that way it gives that jumpsuit like a cloth texture. Left the gloves and the mask glossy in the top of the backpack, but everything else repainted in that flat black. And then also went more around the armpit areas, give a little bit more detail, and then added some dirt on his boots, because while he's riding, sure get some dirt and stuff kicked up on him, so want to add a little bit of that on there. That is the Scout Trooper. And we will get started on the speeder bike. So got the base made up for the lamp. Glued a piece of 1/2-inch plywood and a piece of 3/4-inch melamine laminate together. Got about 1.5 inches depth on the base, and then on the front routed an angle onto the front there, and then just kind of rounded off the corners. Gave it a nice sanding. And then kind of mocked up where I wanted everything to go. I think I'm going to put the main tree here. And then the speeder bike going this way, maybe. Because I'm wanting to keep it inside of the base, because it is a plastic model, so it is kind of fragile, so I don't want it to where it'll be getting hit. So thinking keep the speeder bike going this way a little bit, and then I'm going to add some terrain to give it some unevenness. Use some XPS foam for that. Sand it down, flatten it a little bit, just give it some texture and differentiation since it won't be flat. All right, got the foam carved out and glued down. Just used a rasp and a hot wire cutter and cut it into various shapes. Just used cut off pieces from the USA lamp that I made, the cut off from the US map. Just use those, and didn't really have a rhyme or reason as far as the shape went, except for this side. And then, like I said, just cut them down, shaped them up a little bit, glued them down, shaped them up a little more. Don't have to be perfect because they're going to be covered anyway. Just wanted to give those dips and valleys in the land so it's just not completely flat. And then have my recesses cut it out. And here for the tree, and then for the light pole, I kind of put it off center, more towards the center of the board. That way everything stays center on the lamp. And we'll see how that goes later. And then have my cut out here for the on and off switch, and then for the Return of the Jedi plaque right there. And then on the sides, just kind of add a little bit of spackling to get rid of those dips and valleys from the MDF board. I'll sand it down a little more, but not too worried about it. Hopefully it'll somewhat match the terrain and dirt that we put up here, but I wanted it to be a little bit flat around the edges. I don't want the dirt or anything on the sides. So we will get started on that. For the top of the tree, for the shade support, I'm gonna make these look like branches, but basically drilled some holes into the PVC, added some thick gauge wire, real stiff wire, and then went back around with some 16 gauge wire and added some more structural decorative branches. Not really structural, but it helps tie them all together and give it more support. And then also went through the joints and soldered them just to give it a little bit extra stability. Basically just a whole bunch of bending and measuring and wrapping wire, and then just kind of eyeballing it as far as what I wanted the branches to look like. So to do the sculpting on the tree, used air dry foam clay, and just put it on the tree and put in some lines to represent the bark and unevenness of the tree, and then continuing that up around the branches is also how I made the fallen log in the scene also. And then for the shade, got a branch off a tree in the neighborhood and took the whole branch and just going over it with a light lime green color. Just trying to get the shape and outline of that branch. And then took one of the smaller branches off and went in with a dark green and started going over that, getting the shape put onto the shade, doing it in different angles and using different branches just to get some different textures and looks and not having the same look of the leaves on the shade. So progress on the base. Saw the topsoil covering, and then since this is going to be a forest, wanted different foliage and stuff on the floor, so added some static grass in places, just your regular static grass, and then also some just like foliage, a little sponge foliage in places here and there, just in different spots. And then made some homemade moss using just some sawdust, mixing it with some green paint, water, and a little bit of dish soap, mixing it up, let it dry, and then broke it up, sifted through it, and then just added some of the moss on the trees and stuff. And then a couple of other little plants, because forests have more than one different kind of plant. So for these, just plastic little aquarium plants that I had used while making my wife's Snarfblatt from Little Mermaid. Cut them short and then dipped in Mod Podged and added some of that moss on them. There's one there and one here. Another one over here. And then for these other little ones, again, a different type of aquarium plant here. And just painted those green with a little bit of yellow in them, kind of lighten them up. Yeah, just little plastic aquarium plants. And then we're going to start working on the ferns. Forgot to add also the dead leaves, foliage on the ground, like dead leaves and stuff. Just use some old basil and I think thyme seasoning and just glued those down in certain spots just to add some dead foliage on the ground. But yeah, all right, now back to working on the ferns. To make the ferns, just use some wire, 22 gauge wire, and some painter's tape stuck back to back. Made about 100 of them, and then cut in the shape of a leaf. Got them all cut out, and then went back and just cut diagonal cuts from the spine in the middle, and that was basically it. All right, got all the ferns planted, and the last step is adding the main feature, the speeder bike. So to do that, I was going to mount it right here using an acrylic rod, but instead of buying one, I chose to try and make one out of UV resin and a straw. So this was the first attempt, kind of thick, but had all these air bubbles in it. Tried popping them, just couldn't get it to get like a solid clear. So tried again, made a taller one, a little bit skinnier, different straw, and it was going well. But then after it started to harden with the UV light, it started creating a bubble. Tried popping that, and then just ended up making a whole bunch of little bubbles in there. So third attempt, tried again, and this one turned out really well. Some bubbles on the ends, but you're not going to see those anyways. And this one's pretty clear and nice, and it actually still has the straw on it. Been keeping it on there just to keep the resin from getting scratched or messed up before I install it. So yeah, this is the one we're going to use, and we will get to installing that. All right, got the support in. Use a little bit of 5-minute epoxy, let that dry. Now we will get the speeder bike on and be done. All right, let's go over some of the design details on here. Starting foremost with the support. I tried to get it where it was in line with his legs so it was less visible, and it just goes up into the model. But tried to get it where it was hiding as much as possible, and it's not too bad. I had thought about doing it where it was coming out the side and going into the tree, but I figured that would be a little bit more obvious. But I'm not unhappy with how it came out, being right there. No other way to get it really to make it look like it's floating. So, and then the tree, just got that in the middle as much as I could. That way it was centered on the base, and then the base is basically roughly the same size as the box that the model came in. I believe it was 12 by 17. That way it gave me enough room to create a diorama and put the model on it with it still being inside of the base and not likely to get banged up or hit or anything like that. And then the plaques, I did this bevel on the front of it so I could place the Return of the Jedi one here. And then the bigger one, it wouldn't look right if I had two different size ones on the front and all that. So I decided to put it on the top of the model, but it is also the switch. Make it functional. And decided to go with this design. I could have done better, I think, on the tree branches. Made them thicker maybe, but I wanted mainly just to give it that tree look, like it was up in the branches and the foliage up there. And then it is a little bit forward. Let me see if I can move this. From the base of the tree, as you can see, it sticks out more here, but that was also to get it in line with the base so that way most of it wasn't sticking out the back. So that way it was more centered on the lamp and not taking up a whole bunch more room, especially on the back. And just went around adding the details, trying to make it look like a forest as much as possible without overcrowding and overdoing it. And that is basically it. Oh yeah, let me see if I can flip this over real quick and show you the base. Use my old pillowcase and use that as the backer for the base, and went with this one just because it had the speeder bikes on there in the Ewok village and the forest and all that. The other part of it had Darth Vader, and that scene was in the desert with Jabba's sail barge and everything. So I thought this one fit more into it with that and the Ewoks and everything, since it's in the forest. But that is it. Please leave your comments below. If you could add any tips or any suggestions, or if you like it at all, just leave me a comment. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks. I'd like to thank you all for watching. Hopefully you liked this video. Please like and subscribe. Hopefully it inspired you to go and make. See you next time.